Anna's fingers trembled not from cold but from sheer overwhelm. Brooklyn Farmers Market bustled like a kicked anthill, all shouts and elbows. Then she spotted it, a lone skein of emerald wool, tangled in a bin of onions. 55, she'd survived Soviet breadlines, but this? America's chaos had sharper edges. Still, vibes shifted as she pocketed yarn, its weight familiar as her grandmother's laugh. That night, under a flickering kitchen bulb, she cast on stitches, then an idea. What if needles? Anna's fingers trembled not from cold but from that first clumsy step into Brooklyn's farmer's market, where her Ukrainian vowels tangled like dropped stitches. Back home, wool skeins had been lifelines, wrapped around her mother's hands during blackouts, spun into sweaters that outlasted regimes. Here, they sat untouched in her suitcase, heavy as unsent letters. New York's subway screech haunted her, a sound like impatient scissors snipping thread. 55, she'd expected roots, not this dizzying unraveling. But one damp Tuesday, she spotted a flyer for Stitch and Belong, a knitting circle for newcomers. Vibes were more mismatched yarn than Instagram perfect. Polish grandmothers arguing over purl techniques, a Syrian teen mastering mittens with wonky seams. Anna hesitated, then cast on a row with wool from her suitcase, its familiar sheepy scent a time machine. Each loop was a bridge, clumsy translations became laughter over dropped stitches, her accent softening like well-blocked lace. Months later, watching a Peruvian grandmother wear Anna's scarf to citizenship ceremonies, she realized assimilation wasn't about cutting threads. It was weaving new ones, bright and uneven, into something that could hold. Anna's fingers trembled not from cold but from nerves, clutching that first skein of wool like a lifeline. Brooklyn's winter wind nipped her cheeks as she hurried past stalls of root vegetables and artisanal honey, farmers' market vibes buzzing around her. 55 years old and she still felt like a kid fumbling with mittens. Only now it wasn't snow she feared, but silence. A flyer fluttered against a lamppost, Stitch and Belong. Below, a cartoon sheep winked. She scoffed, but her feet betrayed her, carrying her into a sunlit community center where a dozen hands moved in rhythm, needles clicking like a heartbeat. Women, some her age, some younger, all with that same tentative hunch, sat in a loose circle. No one asked where she'd come from. Instead, a woman with silver braids and a scarf in progress nudged a spare chair toward her. First row was a disaster. Anna's yarn tangled, her cast on too tight, but laughter bubbled up instead of shame. Silver braids, Marta, she'd learn, showed her how to undo mistakes without unraveling entirely. Like life, Marta murmured, though she wasn't sure she'd meant to say it aloud. Months passed. Skeins became scarves, then sweaters, each stitch a tiny rebellion against loneliness. Creator learned to read patterns like subway maps, her hands growing steady even when her accent faltered. She discovered magic of wool, how it could stretch without breaking, how warmth built row by row. One April morning, she brought a basket of yarn dyed gold like her hometown sunflowers. Women gasped, fingers reaching not just for fiber, but for stories woven into its hue. Creator grinned, finally understanding what sheep on that flyer knew all along: some threads were meant to tangle together. By summer, she was teaching newcomers how to purl through tough bits. And when a fresh-faced woman hesitated door, Anna didn't offer pity. She held out a needle and winked. "Trust me," her hand said, "this part's easier than it looks." Anna's fingers trembled not from cold but from frustration. 55 years of muscle memory failed her now, wool slipping like time through arthritic knuckles. Brooklyn Farmers Market bustled around her, all kale chips and kombucha vibes, while she fumbled with a dropped skein, her third this morning. She'd imagined this differently. Back in Minsk, knitting was refuge, not rebellion. Here, it felt like shouting into a subway tunnel. Yet stubbornness had always been her secret stitch. She picked up yarn, rolled it tight, and cast on again. Her apartment smelled of cabbage and lavender, walls papered with half-finished scarves. A flyer for Stitch and Belong clung to her fridge, edges curling. She'd circled that address twice and read, then ignored it for weeks. What if no one came? Worse, what if they did, and she had nothing to offer? But doubt unraveled faster than cheap acrylic. One Tuesday, she arrived early, clutching a basket of spare needles. By noon, room hummed with Farsi, Tagalog, broken English. A woman from Quito showed her a pattern twisted like mountain roads. A Syrian grandmother laughed as Anna mispronounced Calamon. Mistakes piled like dropped stitches, awkward, human, fixable. Farmer's Market became her battleground. She sold hats between heirloom tomatoes, explaining tension to a hipster who called it mindful crafting. Her Russian accent thickened when tired, but so did her resolve. Each skein was a fight, against invisibility, against lie that starting over meant starting empty. Winter came early. Wind gnawed her stall, but her table stayed crowded. A girl from Lagos bought mittens, whispering how green reminded her of home. Anna tucked an extra pair into her bag, no charge. Wool could bridge gaps words couldn't. By spring, her hands no longer shook. Calluses bloomed where uncertainty once lived. Anna's fingers trembled not from cold but from nerves as she unfurled a skein of wool across her lap, its vibrant indigo bleeding into twilight shadows of her tiny Brooklyn apartment. Outside, winter gnawed brownstone steps, but inside, needles clicked like metronomes keeping time for courage. Tonight wasn't just about pearl stitches. Tonight she turned yarn into a lifeline. For months she noticed them, newcomers huddled near farmers' markets, gripping foreign phrases like fraying threads. Women her age, hands idle with displacement, eyes darting past artisanal jams as if they'd forgotten how to belong. She knew that ache. 5 years ago, she'd been one fumbling with subway cards, mistaking Brooklyn's brusqueness for hostility. Knitting had saved her then. Now she'd pay it forward. Gutsy move? Absolutely. She hauled a folding table into community center, slapped down a basket of wool skeins, and waited. First hour, crickets. Then Elena shuffled in, a skeptical Moldovan grandmother who'd scoffed Anna's flyers. What's point? She'd muttered days earlier. Yet here she was, hovering near merino wool like it might bite. Woman didn't push. Just cast on, looped yarn with exaggerated slowness, then, accidentally, dropped a stitch. Elena's gasp was comically dramatic. Fix! Now! She ordered, snatching needles midair. Laughter unspooled between them. By week's end, 12 women crowded table, swapping broken English and flawless knit two-togethers. A local reporter, hunting for fluff, snapped a shot of she mid-row, arms raised like a wool-wielding conductor. Next morning, her face blazed across social feeds, knit to belong trending, strangers hailing her as guerrilla grandma of assimilation. City Hall slid into her DMs, begging a collaboration. Anna chuckled, rolling another skein between palms. This twist? Unexpected. But as Elena proudly displayed a lopsided scarf. For mayor! He needs color. Warmth bloomed in Anna's chest. Skeptic turned ally. Crowd roaring, not for fame, but for frayed edges weaving together. She glanced wool, now a symbol spun into something bigger. This is my start. Not bad for a 55-year-old who once thought courage only came in youth-sized doses. Anna's fingers trembled not from cold but from nerves, clutching that first wool skein like a lifeline in a city that buzzed too fast for her 55-year-old bones. Yet within weeks, her knitting needles became stealthy wands, transforming yarn into belonging. She started small, scarves with mismatched stripes, hats that sat too snug. But then, on a whim, she pinned a note to a Brooklyn farmers market bulletin board, "Newcomers, bring your stories. I'll bring tea and spare needles." By month 3, her living room was a mosaic of accents and dropped stitches. A Ukrainian grandmother purled through grief. A Guatemalan baker knit her homesickness into a blanket's tight rows. Anna's odd habit, humming Soviet nursery rhymes while counting stitches, became their inside joke, loosening tongues along with tangled yarn. Even market vendor, a gruff Vermonter, traded squash for mittens, muttering, "Damn things actually fit." That wool skein? Now a shared trophy, passed like a baton. Anna watched a Syrian teen teach her crew to knit Arabic calligraphy into coasters. It's just connecting loops. Girl shrugged. Like languages. Grab your needles, cast on courage. Every stitch is a bridge.